Since the middle of the 19th century, people traveling across the remote desert plains of Texas have reported seeing strange glowing orbs moving just off the edge of their vision. Some say these are spirits of angry Apache warriors who died in battles with U.S. soldiers. Others claim they're UFOs from another world. But whatever they are, the so-called ghost lights of Marfa remain one of the most unexplained mysteries in American history. But if these lights really are the spirits of angry Native Americans, then what happens to those who disrespect them? Join me today as we look into the bizarre case of the ghost lights of Marfa and what really happened to the three friends who camped out to see them. The isolated town of Marfa sits about 30 miles from the border of Mexico and has a permanent population of around 500 people. It's also right next to the old Marfa Lights Viewing Center, which is built at the base of a water tower at the intersection of Highway 67 and Highway 90. This spot marks the edge of town, but more importantly, it is here that people have been reporting strange lights since at least 1881, when Pioneer Helen Viola wrote a story about them for the local newspaper. For years, locals had a simple explanation for the lights. They were the souls of Confederate soldiers who died during the Civil War. However, this theory falls apart when you consider that the nearest major battle between Union and Confederate troops was over 100 miles away, and there aren't any records of any large engagements happening near Marfa. Not only that, but many of the same people who claimed the lights were Confederate soldiers would also say that they were actually Apache spirits. And later, some claimed they were aliens. Over time, scientists have come up with several potential explanations for the lights. One theory claims they're actually reflections of light from passing cars on the highway. Another suggests they could be spontaneous human combustion, where an individual bursts into flames without any external source of ignition. However, both of these theories were disproven in 1948 when a team from Texas Western College set up cameras to capture the phenomenon. They even went as far as digging ditches around the lights to see if maybe they were caused by underground gases or swamp lights, but they couldn't find anything. In fact, the only conclusion the researchers came to was that the lights seemed to form human shapes and walk on two legs. The footage taken by the team from Texas Western College remains some of the best evidence we have of the Marfa lights. In one clip, we can see several white orbs seeming to march in formation across the field. Another shows a lone figure walking with its arms outstretched. And yet another captured an entire parade of humanoid lights moving through the desert. While none of the scientific explanations could account for these shapes, paranormal enthusiasts were quick to point out that they resembled the tall, thin figures typically described by Native American legends. According to folklore, the spirits come from the nearby Shinati Mountains where the Apache people used to live hundreds of years ago. Then one day, a detachment of U.S. soldiers entered the territory and killed many of them. To this day, they wander the area as glowing lights, forever stuck between this world and the next. One evening in February 2006, three friends named Jeff, Jason, and James decided to take the legend seriously and spend a night camping in the desert to try and see the lights up close. All three friends were from El Paso, just an hour-and-a-half drive from Marfa, and they arrived just as the sun was setting over the horizon. The trio set up their tents close to the highway, but far enough back from the road to avoid being blinded by headlights. Once everything was set up, they sat around a small fire, sharing stories and making sure their weapons were within reach, just in case they needed to defend themselves against wild animals or ghosts. All three friends knew the risks of camping in the area. Many people had disappeared after going to see the lights, and there were rumors that anyone who stayed too long in the desert would suffer horrible fates. Despite this, nobody backed down, and they stayed until long after midnight. But nothing happened, so they made a small campfire and slept under the vast darkness of the endless desert sky. When they woke up, they found that their fire had burned out during the night, but otherwise, nothing seemed out of place. There were no signs of wild animals, and aside from a few tumbleweeds rolling past, they had seen nothing all night. Just as they were finishing up breakfast, they noticed something peculiar. Nobody had seen or heard them arrive, and as they packed up their campsite, they noticed that there were tire tracks left behind by the car that brought them to the viewing center. It seemed safe to assume that whoever had driven them had left and returned to fetch them. After all, the area is known for the mysterious lights, and it would be easy to assume that someone may have been scared off by whatever they saw. But upon closer inspection, they realized that the tire tracks hadn't been made by a car at all. They were made by a truck. And not only that, but the truck had 4 distinct wheel tracks, meaning it never had a 5th wheel, such as a trailer. And this is when things started to get strange. They looked around for any sign of life, but they didn't see anyone or anything at all. So they got into the truck and drove off to find cell service to call whoever had brought them out there. As they traveled deeper into the desert, the terrain changed dramatically. They went from a flat, open plain to rocky hills with thickets of cacti growing everywhere. Finally, they reached the top of a rise in the land, and they stopped to catch their breath. It was then that they realized the truck they had been driving was not theirs. The seats were unfamiliar, and there was a blanket covering the bed of the truck. When they pulled the blanket off, they saw a pair of tents, one blue and one green. These were the tents they had brought with them to camp out. What had happened to them? The 3 friends searched the truck and found nothing else. So they turned around and headed back to the highway, hoping to find some answers at the next gas station. About 30 minutes later, they arrived at a crossroads with a small wooden sign pointing toward a gas station, general store, and RV park. Pulling into the parking lot, they hoped to find some answers. But when they stepped out of the truck, the owner of the gas station rushed up to them and asked if they had seen a pickup truck in the area. He explained that his truck had been missing for a few days, and he was worried that something had happened to it. But when the men said they had been camping overnight and hadn't seen anything, he thanked them and walked back inside. At this point, Jeff, Jason, and James had been walking around the parking lot for almost 15 minutes, trying to think of what to do next. They had no idea how they got there, and now the man whose truck they had stolen was looking at them suspiciously. That's when James suggested they check the camcorder to see if maybe it had recorded something useful. As they reviewed the footage, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. On camera were images of the mysterious lights, but they weren't just lights. They formed human shapes and walked right toward the camera. In fact, it seemed as though they were marching directly towards them. The whole time they had been sitting around the campfire. They had been less than 10 feet away from the lights, and they hadn't even noticed. But this wasn't the scariest part. As they continued watching, they realized the lights seemed to stop just before reaching their camp. Then suddenly, the image flickered and cut out. When they turned the camcorder back on, they saw that the lights had vanished. And to their horror, the lens cap lay on the ground between them and the woods. Suddenly, the forest seemed darker, and the wind carried an eerie silence. The 3 friends packed up as quickly as they could and drove away, never looking back. Now I turn it over to you. What do you think happened to those poor guys? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends for more amazing videos like this one. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.